Welcome to the Nehemiah Entrepreneurship Community Podcast. I'm your host, Patrice Sage, and I'm here today with Robert Fukui and Richard Zielke. And we're going to be talking about the Global Kingdom Investors Forum for Nehemiah Week 2020. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, I love the applause as we came in, so I feel like I'm doing something here.
Yeah.
We believe in affirmation. So let me tell you a bit about our guests. So you guys know Richard. Richard has been here before. Richard, our home office coach, as well as our chaplain. And Richard, we just finished an incredible staff retreat. Maybe you led us into the morning devotionals, just powerful. So Richard, give them, for those watching this podcast for the first time and haven't seen you before, give a sense of who you are and a bit of your journey so that they can know your story.
All right. Well, my is a bit. I actually went to school to become a coach. But my ideal was to be an athletic coach and a high school teacher. God got a hold of me and sent me off to seminary after college. And so I went as a associate for 10 years. Had some difficult times with an exit from my last church. The senior pastor had struggles with the congregation, having to pick up the pieces and working outrageous number of hours. And by the time the new senior pastor came on board, I was just totally spent. So I decided to step away from ministry. And I was started a program counseling to become a counselor, and introduced into academic administration and was offered a position with the school that I was pursuing my counseling degree at, and that started almost a 10-year process of being involved in academic administration. Where I wound up being the executive director of a local campus of a global for-profit educational system. And I had come on board in August. They told that they were going to close the campus. So I got to introduce myself in meetings and such as the captain of a sinking ship. And it was an opportunity to work not only with the students as we completed their programs to help them get their first position at school, but to also work with faculty and staff to help them take a look at, am I going to continue teaching? Am I going to continue in academia and all this? And explore options with people. And that really kind of got me going and thinking that this might indeed be what I do next. I left that position when my contract expired, and the privilege of taking a few months to just kind of sit back and say, what's next? And during that time, God kept bringing entrepreneurs to me. And their questions about what do I need to do to get started? How do I move ahead? How do I get over this hurdle? And so I was in this process of helping them, and I was part of a business support group through Fellowship of Companies for Christ International. And they kept telling me, hey, you got to go talk to Patrice and those guys down at Nehemiah Project. You're doing the same thing they are. So I showed up on their holiday open house and started talking to Patrice and Scott Landis. And we realized that, especially Scott and I, that I was doing actually fitting into a piece that Nehemiah Project wasn't really meeting and working with those who are doing the dreaming and to build up that initial stages, where the Kingdom Business coaches were taking businesses who were profitable and moving them to succession. I kind of stepped in at the front end of that, and so it was just a natural fit. I came on board. That was probably about a year or so after I got certified to teach bit entrepreneurship, and we've been moving it since then, seeing Nehemiah grow some bounds the last few months. And then just recently, this last year, Patrice and I sat down and talked about the need for a chaplain within the organization. And so I was presented with that opportunity, and they got to desire and my sweet spot of ministering to people and helping them grow in their spiritual walk. So that's my story, and I'm going to stick to it.
Wow. Thank you, Richard. And by the way, we did a whole podcast with Richard about what it means to be a chaplain, and we talked more about that. If you've not watched that or seen that or heard that, you want to go to NehemiahEcommunity.com and go to our podcast, and you'll be able to take advantage of those podcasts. And he gave some tips about really how to work with chaplain within your own organization. Richard, what you also do, you also administer those who inquire to be funded through our JICN, whether connected with an investor or whether to our own fund. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So we'll get more into it. Richard, you led us in a devotional time the last 3 days at our morning staff retreat. Give a chance to our audience until we just literally came out of our last day of retreat. This is maybe your third or second year in these retreats. We're not totally virtual. How was that experience? How was it this time for you, different than other times?
It was interesting. I was having a conversation with our e-community on Tuesday, yesterday, and talking about how having conversations virtually compared to face-to-face conversations, and how I've noticed in some meetings that I've been at. Of course, this didn't happen at the staff meeting at all. But if conversations got heated, people just simply signed off. Rather than really taking the time to work through whatever the discussion was. And so I missed that about the face-to-face, because it's kind of, when you're meeting face-to-face, if it gets uncomfortable, there's really kind of a social pressure to stay and work through the conversation. But in working with our group, and you and Robert both can attest to this. We have such a marvelous team that has been gathered together. God has just truly blessed us with it, and it is truly a family. And the sense of support and encouragement that we give each other is just tremendous. Even when we had a discussion about whether a center director was done in a loving and supporting way, and we were able to, as he responded, we were able to laugh about that and such. So, I'm finding that it's, one hand, we're working well together virtually. On the other hand, I miss the face-to-face.
Yeah. For sure. Well, thank you, man, for bringing those devotion, and thank you for keeping us spiritually rooted. Robert Fukui is our vice chair of our board. He's also a certified beat trainer. He's also a coach in his own right. He runs a company called I-61 Business Development. Robert is based out of California. You will forgive him for that, but Robert, you are a biblical entrepreneur, and you are also emceeing our business forum, our not executive, global and kingdom investors forum this year, as you did last year. First of all, thanks for agreeing to come back to do it. Robert, a bit about you, so that the audience, I know our audience, many of them know you because you used to do the the Profit and Profitability podcast, and they've seen you with me at different time on different podcasts, and of course you being in Nehemiah Week. So tell them a bit about you, so that way they can kind of get a flavor and what you've been about lately, because you've been doing a lot of neat stuff lately too.
Yeah, it's been definitely an interesting, fun season. So I was born a poor little rich boy in Hawaii. Not rich in spirit, because my dad was a pastor. So I was spiritually rich. We definitely weren't that well off, but I was born in Hawaii. Then moved out to San Jose, California, when I was 9 years old. My dad felt called to he thought we were going to go back to Washington. He actually went to Bible college in Washington State, and but on his way to Washington, he stopped in San Jose to visit some friends. My mom and my sister were still back in Hawaii waiting for the green light to come out. But he stopped in San Jose to visit some friends, and he never left. He decided, hey, I think this is a place to be. So he called us out. So we all moved to San Jose, and so I grew up there. As you're growing up, and especially in the church, so, you hear so many stories about pastors' kids, and I wasn't that bad. Although I've done a few things, but it's kind of when it got to a period where I needed to kind of find myself. And so I was looking at, when I got into high school, I was looking at my friends having all this fun, going to parties and such and all that, and I kind of had to see what that was like. And so I kind of started drifting away from the church, and as I got into college, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Opposite of Richard, I did not want to go to seminary. That was definitely the place I wasn't going to go. I wasn't going to follow my dad in his footsteps of being a pastor. So I figured, let me get into business. I figured that's probably as far away as from being in the church as possible. So I got into as I was in college, I really didn't know what I wanted to be, and so just kind of through process of elimination through all the courses, I kind of checked off the ones I didn't like. And so process of elimination, when I took my first marketing class, was actually business class, was when I said, hey, I can dig this. And then when I took my first marketing class, I decided to really concentrate in marketing. So I got a business degree, but I concentrated in marketing. And then right out of college, even before I graduated, I actually got an offer from Coca-Cola. I actually did a summer internship with them the summer before I graduated. They offered me a job. Obviously, great opportunity. It was definitely going to look good on my resume. I didn't think I was going to be with them long term, but I knew for the experience and the resume build, it was definitely the place I felt, why not start there? It was right at the time we launched Powerade, and then the World Cup was in the U.S. And so got a lot of great experience launching a major brand, actually launched another brand in the same period. And then event marketing and all the stuff that goes into it. And then a few years afterwards, I went into the pharmaceutical industry, which is really where I wanted to go when I was in college. That was actually the industry I really wanted to get into, but a lot of the big companies wanted sales experience. So that was another reason why I took the Coke job, was because I got the experience. Look at my resume. So the first pharma company I interviewed with, I got the job. Actually, the first resume I submitted to a first pharmaceutical company, I got the call, and then I got the job. So it's pretty easy. So my strategy worked out, that I knew working for Coke was going to open some doors. so definitely did, and spent 20 years in pharmaceutical, 17 years with Bristol Myers Squibb, all in marketing and sales. Launched about 6 major brands. And then got to a period, I guess as you start to hit midlife crisis in your 40s, I started to really ponder what I was going to do the rest of my life. And at that time, I had actually gone back to church when I met my wife, Kaylee. She was a very strong-rooted Baptist, so she's definitely was one of the must-haves was we got to go to church. and so I said, I could do that. I've had experience in this area, but we landed in the church in Pasadena, and I really loved it. And I got involved. There's this guy named Lance Wallnau that came to our church a number of years ago, and he started talking about the 7 Mountain Mandate. And what our role is in influencing society and where we are. And so that got me thinking about what's my next step. Is it supposed to stay climbing up the corporate ladder, or was I supposed to do something different? And so I started actually exploring, having a business, but I didn't know what kind of business I wanted. So I made a list of all these different businesses. I think I went on the SBA site and got the list of all these different types of business. And I just kind of like college in my career, I just checked off the ones I didn't want to do. And so the list of checkmark business was pretty long. I was like, what am I going to do? So I decided, well, why don't I do some consulting? I'll do some marketing consulting. That's what I know. And I'll just try and consult with different business. I started with some friends for free. And then I thought maybe, and I liked the consulting, especially when the first two friends I was able to help, and it really worked out and helped their business. So I started charging, and then I thought, well, maybe I'll do some paid market research to maybe I'll find a business that I want to do through consulting with other business. So that was my strategy. And then this guy named Patrice Gay came to our church about 8, 9 years. I'm not sure exactly how long it's been now. Started talking about biblical entrepreneurship, and it really resonated with me because, with my background in church, my dad being a pastor, being in a corporate environment, I would always, even when I wasn't going to church, I would always look at ways, the way business was doing business sometimes. And a lot of times what I noticed was whenever things were going well in the business, it was rooted in biblical principles, even if the company didn't realize it or not. And when it didn't go well, they were violating biblical principles. So I just intuitively understood that a lot of it, so I thank God for being raised in the church, or really, a kid, about not wanting to be a pastor, but, now as I coach people, I think sometimes I feel like I'm a pastor. But, I thank God for that deep root in the Bible. And I started seeing those correlations. And so when you came around, I was like, yeah, this is it. And so I was actually in the process of creating a business plan for my consulting business, as you probably remember. And so I figured, well, why not just take BE? Let's do a kingdom business plan in a sense. And so, and as at the same time too, our ministry school at the church, they asked me to develop an entrepreneurship program. And I'm like, okay, I've never had a business. So I'm like, what is this going to look like? So I decided, take BE for two things. One, let's vet this thing out, that maybe we use BE as the foundation for our entrepreneurship program, but also two, for myself, I'm also develop my business plan around it. So, compete in the international business plan competition, all that. And then, we decided to, license out BE at our church, as you know, and taught that for about 6 or 7 years, I believe. So fast forward, 4 years ago, I finally left Bristol Myers Squibb, left my corporate job, and started really focusing on helping small family run business. And it's been I was doing it part-time before, but as I launched into this full-time, I launched into full-time and actually working with my wife, and which is one of the things I didn't want to do, because I thought it'd be like the express way to divorce is working with your wife. All the stories I've heard from other people. But she really insisted, and so I said, okay. So we started traveling together with our business and stuff like that, and actually, as we were consulting with our business, with marketing, with business development, and all this kind of stuff, I started noticing, as the business owners start to open up about their marriage life, and I started kind of coaching them on their marriage because of all the 2 years of counseling that Kaylee and I did before we got married. So kind of giving the same tools that we learned. So after a while, I started looking at the parallels between what was happening at home and what was happening in the business. So when things weren't healthy at home, it was being carried into the business, and vice versa. When things weren't healthy in the business, it was being carried in at home. And so I asked my wife, I said, hey, if to really do something well with the business, and especially when they're married, we really need to start at home. But we can't just talk to one half of the couple. We need to talk to both of them. That will get you the biggest bang for your buck. So we decided to really be intentional about it, and we tested out a program last year called Power Couples by Design, and it worked out really well, got a lot of fruit from it. And we did see the fruit that we expected was that the business did improve, but also the marriage life improved as well. And it wasn't because we addressed one side or the other, it's because we addressed both. Right? Because if things are stressful in the business, it's definitely going to carry into the home. And then when things are stressful in a marriage, it's going to carry over there. So we We focus on the marriage piece in their communication and conflict resolution. When you have a healthy way of resolving conflict, you can do anything, including in the business, because as you all know, there's conflict in business, right? Especially these days. And so it's such a blessing. And this year it really kind of accelerated things, because obviously with COVID and lockdown, it really exposed people's marriage weaknesses because they're spending more time with each other. And they couldn't hide by going to work, right? A lot of them had to work from home. And so it really accelerated some things, and we've really developed some key relationships with a lot of marriage experts, entrepreneurship couples that have the same heart to do this. And you guys do too. And so we have a formal program around that. And so it's just so rewarding that we get to do both sides. So, full circle, I said I didn't want to be a pastor, but now here we are sitting in front of couples a lot of times. And I'm like, am I a consultant? Am I a coach, or am I a pastor? And the answer is yes. And so that's kind of what led to me meeting you, Patrice, and being involved with this, which I'm so blessed to do. And then what we're doing, my wife and I are doing in this season. And so we're just so grateful for what's going on right now. And COVID's actually helped us.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Robert. Robert, I'm curious, why did you want to be in pharmaceutical?
So I grew up in Silicon Valley. And so the one thing I didn't want to do was go into tech, because it's always been a volatile industry. I mean, there's a little bit more stability because a lot of big companies now, but back then in the 90s, early 90s, it was very volatile. Yeah, there's tons of companies popping up, but there's a ton of companies that are actually closing up. A ton of companies actually being bought out and all that. And it was so volatile, you didn't know what was going to happen, if your job was secure or whatever. There was a big payoff, when you get stocks and all that, but you never know. So I didn't want to go into that, because I'm all about stability. I was brought up with my dad, go to school, get a job, So I was all about stability. So back then, and especially in the early 90s, pharmaceuticals is a very stable industry. People start and retire in the same company. It's not so much that way now, but back then it was. And it paid well. I mean, let's face it, the benefits are great. The work environment was awesome, at least where I worked. Work from home, going from working from home, my sales position, to when I started consulting and working from home, and then COVID working from home, nothing's really changed for me in the last 30 years, really, to be honest. So there's a lot of benefits in that industry, and so I just said, let's go into that. And, I really enjoyed the industry. I really enjoyed the company I worked for. Got a lot of great experience that I bring into small business, even though I focus on marketing. But the minute I walk into these typical family-run small business, doing less than 30 million a year, I immediately see the holes in the organization that need to be fixed before you actually move into the marketing. So I'll see things that we need to fix, because some brands that I worked with, we did $1 billion a year, and so we called them business units. We didn't call it just a brand. We actually internally we called it a business unit, because we had everything a business has. We had our own legal team, we had our own HR, we had our own operations. It wasn't just a marketing and sales department. When we looked at the structure, it was a business. And so immediately I could see the benefit improving the organizational structure will immediately improve the profitability of the business. And then we add the marketing on top of it, because if we do the opposite, where a lot of business think that's the answer, is more customers, a lot of time that actually hurts the business. So I learned a lot from working in pharmaceuticals, but that's kind of the long answer to why I targeted the pharmaceutical industry.
What I love about your story is that you sought stability, and then you've got experience, but then you came to seeing a life where it was no longer about stability. It was about calling and passion. And you made that transition, which was a risk for you. I'm curious, tell us a bit about that, because there are many people listening who say, okay, you were kind of didn't have the entrepreneurship DNA because you know the stability, but then that came later. Tell us about, that second shift for you, because some people can learn from that in terms of how did you know that it was now time, and how did you manage the fact that you do seek stability to not go into this unstable environment called entrepreneurship, let alone kingdom business?
Yeah, so definitely I needed to. I think the path to being a business owner definitely was the right path for me, because of my risk tolerance. I have very low risk tolerance, some people have high risk tolerance, so that's good for them. But for me, I had low risk tolerance, but working in a stable company, a company that's been around for over 130 years, there's a lot to be learned of how you actually start a business and how you go through the business. So, they have, you can't be around for 130 years and not do some things right. They do mostly things well, but they also make mistakes. So some of the things I learned from these stable businesses is how they deal with mistakes. We actually use mistakes. We can actually pivot and actually use the mistake for good. It's kind of like that's, in the Bible, they talk, how God use evil for good kind of thing. And I've actually seen that at work in a business environment. We don't call it evil, we had a mistake. So one quick example is, and actually I wasn't around at this time with Coca-Cola, but you remember when New Coke came around?
Yep.
They did, the misunderstanding is the New Coke actually did well, but they pivoted back to the old Coke. So what happens is they did all the proper market research, focus group, all the things you're supposed to do to bring a brand to market. And all the signs said this was going to be a home run. When they launched it, sales actually did go up, but the lashback from all the loyal Coke drinkers was so great that even the local distributors were saying, we got to bring the old Coke back. Within 3 months, they pivoted and brought the old Coke back. So one of the mistakes they actually made in the beginning, they wouldn't have to really have done that, but one of the mistakes they made actually was they took old Coke off the market and the only option was New Coke.
Why was that, by the way?
What's that?
What was the logic there?
Well, because all the market research showed that this was going to be a home run. So instead of having two brands and diluting the customer base, they focus on that one thing, right?
So they didn't. So because I would have thought it's about expanding the market, but they thought consolidation.
It was a replacement. It was supposed to be a replacement. Yeah. It was supposed to be the thing that's going to drive it forward. So actually, from the numbers, it actually did better. The sales were going up, but the lashback from all the loyal drinkers, we were definitely losing people. So they brought old Coke back and they just relabeled it Classic Coke. They didn't take New Coke off the market. They just brought it in as another option, right? What they should have done to begin with. But, hindsight's 20/20. So I understand the logic both ways. But anyways, they brought New Coke back to call it, or old Coke back to call it Classic Coke. There was a whole new relaunch of Classic Coke. And then sales just went gangbusters.
Wow.
And so the ability to pivot, this isn't a matter of 3 months they made this decision. A lot of big businesses don't make that decision that quick, especially when they invest so much. But it's probably a little easier to pivot in this case because there's not much they have to change on the distribution and the manufacturing. But all that to say is they listened to the market. And even though sales were going up, they could have still said, forget it, because sales are going up, right? But decided we have to take care of our loyal customers, and they brought it back, made it an option. And so went forward. So anyways, I learned a lot from how businesses make mistakes, how they're always planning for succession, right? Because you have 130 years, there's a lot of succession. So there's a lot of things that I see that in big business, and I bring it right into the small business community, because these aren't things that are like, crazy ideas. It's not something that takes a lot of effort. It was just a basic understanding of how to do business well. So I lost your question. I was going to answer your question, but pivoting to leaving that safety and environment. So yeah, like I said, I was born, I was raised for stability. Having a business, obviously, there's a lot of unknowns, and it was really, I won't bore you with the details, but there's 2 periods when I thought I was going to leave. The one 4 years ago when I finally did leave, but the 2 years prior I thought I was going to leave. But I was really praying about this. I was like, Lord, is this the right move? Is this the time, or is this what you want me to do? If I'm supposed to leave, make it clear that I'm supposed to leave, or make it clear I'm supposed to stay. This was 2 years before I eventually left. Well, there's some 2 clear signs that I was supposed to stay. And I even counseled my pastor on this, even counseled my wife. And it was clear. There was 2 clear signs, within 2 weeks, that I was supposed to stay. So I did. The second time around, this last time, it was pretty quiet. And so at that point, I knew it was my choice. And I felt God was going to bless either way. Am I going to leave the business and go into consulting, or am I going to forget the consulting and just stay in the business? Because I was at that period, I couldn't do both anymore. I was doing part-time in the consulting and still working full-time in my drug company. So I knew I had to make a choice. And then when things were quiet, when I was praying to the Lord, and my wife and I prayed to the Lord, I knew it was my choice, and I knew it was going to be blessed either way. But I also knew I had to make the move because I understood what I could do, how I benefit these companies. Because staying where I am, I'm helping one company, and I'm just one of thousands of people, right? And when profitability goes up, sales go up in a large corporation, it's great. You get some hurrahs, you even get the prizes, we won award trips and all that. But then you get back on Monday and it's like, okay, what are you going to do now, right? It doesn't mean as much to the upper management. When you're helping a small business, a family-run business, especially during this time, you see how much it impacts and how deep it impacts. And for me, that's what's worth it more. And so I knew I can make a bigger impact with more business, more families if we left. Especially now that I'm talking about family business and marriages and stuff. I mean, you're seeing a deeper and deeper impact of what we're doing. But the thing that really tipped it over that I knew it was time to leave was that my wife had peace in the move. The first time around, she didn't have peace. The second time around, she had peace. She says, we're going to be okay if you leave.
Wow.
And at that point, that was the tipping point. You know, regardless of the prayers and the signs and all that, it always boiled down to, did the two of us have peace in this decision? Because this is an important decision, right? Because it impacts both of us, impacts our family. And so I would tell our couples the same thing. You guys have to be on the same page. You have to be in agreement with these types of decisions.
Mm.
When one doesn't have peace, something not good is going to happen. Maybe not now, but at some point. But when you're both in agreement, even when things don't, it doesn't guarantee that everything's going to work out, but definitely more times than not, things are going to work out. But even in the moment things don't work out, because you're both in agreement, it does not fracture the relationship. But when you're not in agreement and things don't work out, then it starts deeper in the fracture of the relationship. So I said, your relationship is first and foremost. When you're both in agreement, most of the time things are going to work out. When the times that don't work out, it's still going to be okay because you have each other, you got your back, you're not fracturing a relationship, and you move on to the next thing, and that's going to work out. And so it boils down to the relationship, the marriage is more important than business, but when you do marriage well, the business is going to work out. You can do anything.
I love it. What a tip. I mean, knowing your gift set, knowing your temperament, making decisions based on that, and then knowing when your time is up, being discerning and listening to the Holy Spirit, taking it to prayer and testing the spirit to make sure it's the right timing. Make sure you're agreeing with your wife in alignment, but also what matters to you most, right? Understanding that, and then of course further preparation, biblical entrepreneurship, and other things that you did. That is, I mean, that's the prototype for transition process. So again, we're talking to Robert Fukui and Mr. Zielke, and we're talking about Nehemiah 2020 Global Kingdom Investors Forum. Robert is going to be our host. Richard is the administrator of those entrepreneurs who come in and want to raise capital. So, guys, let's talk about capital raising, right? Let's talk about it. So, my first, by the way, if you've not yet registered for Nehemiah Week, you want to be a part, go to NehemiahWeek.com, NehemiahWeek.com. There you can register and join us from August the 10th through the 15th as we learn and we not only get equipped, but also we connect with other entrepreneurs, and you get to celebrate entrepreneurship at a global level by watching those who want to pitch at the Investors Forum. It's a Shark Tank-like opportunity where entrepreneurs get to meet with real-life investors and are able to raise capital. So far, we've deployed about $2.2 million of capital into businesses. And then we also have the International Business Plan Competition, where you get a chance to hear those who've gone through the training program that both Richard and Bob has gone through, where they get you to compete for who will win the competition for the country. So, guys, how important in this covered environment, how important is capital in this covered environment? And is it a different way to look at it in the COVID environment than before? Let me start with you, Robert. In this COVID environment, how should we look at capital in this environment, and should it be different than traditionally? If so, how?
I mean, capital is always important in any environment, no matter what situation it is. I mean, capital really, we look by definition at resources, right? What resources do you have to keep the business going, to start the business, to keep the business going? So obviously, capital is important no matter what environment it is. Now, especially when you look into this COVID environment, and when you're in a business that's considered non-essential, obviously you're being negatively impacted because of the restrictions of doing business. Now it's different across the country, but obviously here in California, you're looking at the hair salons, the gyms, and all that. They're closed unless they can do if they can do outdoor training or outdoor business outdoors, and it's okay. But definitely it's limiting your ability to do business, and which means that your cash flow is probably going to be impacted because it's limiting your capacity to business, which means it limits the amount of customers you can handle, which means it's going to limit the amount of sales you will have and profitability. So, managing cash flow is a huge issue. And then when it comes to the capital, do I have the capital, the resources? Really, I mean, you got to look at just the resource, not just look at money. But you said, do I have the resources to keep going through this period? And especially in this period, we don't know how long this period is going to last, right? I mean, here in California, we've gone through opening and we've gone through shutting back down. so feel like a yo-yo, a ping pong, whatever analogy you want to create. But we're a period of unknowns. And so when you ask that question, do I have the capital to get through this period? Well, number one, we got to figure out how long is this period going to be. And so really right now, we should be in a period of looking at how do we redefine, we hear the word pivot all the time. We have to look at the ways of redefining our business right now, assuming things aren't going to get better. Right now, the way I'm dealing with our clients right now is I'm saying, let's assume things aren't going to get better. In fact, if anything, it might get worse. And I was almost being prophetic when I said this a couple months ago with some of my clients, because things did get worse. It kind of scaled back. But we got to plan, we got to adjust the business to pivot, to make a long-term adjustment. Because even when things get better, and it will at some point, but when things get better, the business can be better for it. Because when you can be profitable within the limitations, restrictions that are going on right now, then you're going to be that much better once things open up. So don't deal with this just as a short-term issue. Use this as an opportunity to look at the long-term. So when you go back to capital, do I have the resources to make these pivots? What adjustments do we need to make? And what resources do I need to make these adjustments? Some of them can be minor, but some of them may need some cash to maybe purchase some new equipment or software, do some kind of upgrades to make the customer experience and the customer buying a lot easier, maybe a little bit more virtual or whatever. There's whatever needs to happen to change the business environment or change your business in order for just, right now it's just less contact is kind of the buzzword. So how do we do business by minimizing contact? Some coaches like us, we can do business totally virtual. But if you have a product or a service that needs physical contact at some point, we got to still figure out ways to limit that contact. But anyways, all that to say is we got to look at what are we going to do for the long term to make this business work for the long term, assuming things don't get better. And then what capital do I need to make the adjustments?
Good. Richard, what are your thoughts? Richard has Wi-Fi.
Wow, what Robert had to say there, and it's. I think one of the things that I've seen and have had. I wish this example was a client of mine, but it's a friend of mine who had a restaurant, and it obviously restaurants were shut down immediately. Took a look at it saying, okay, do we just close down, or are we going to, as Robert said, pivot and look at how we're going to do this? They, rather than to shut down and wait. And so they actually invested in some software to move their restaurant to ordering online. And so they were they put out their daily specials, and each after next day, and they have found that they have increased um, their bottom line through these through the offering of online orders. So they actually have more often than not sold out of their daily specials than have leftovers. So this is a case where that pivot has been very beneficial for them. They invested the capital up front to increase their software potential, and they've already seen that return on that investment. I think what's important for us is working with entrepreneurs is really to help our entrepreneurs make sure that any vision they have moving forward is very explicitly defined, so that when they present that to an investor, there is a clear indication for the investor of what it is they're going to do, how long it's going to take them to recoup or to move ahead in their productivity or their services or whatever they're offering. So it's that opportunity that we have as coaches to sit down with the entrepreneur and work through projections. I think I take the same route that Robert does, as having really projections at this point, and because we don't know how long it's going to last, as Robert said. So a clear, concise, looking forward, is I think the entrepreneur needs to have it.
Awesome. Thank you, Richard. My next question for you guys, again, we're talking to Robert Fukui and Richard Zielke about the Global Kingdom Investors Forum at Nehemiah Week 2020. Again, there's still space, so if you want to register, go to nehemiahweek.com. There you can learn more about how to be a part of the conference this year. So I've heard and then we're going to talk about the criteria in a minute, but I heard about the concern that some have had about making sure that you're not borrowing money or getting investors to invest in a business that actually, because of COVID, is not going to be here tomorrow, right? Because in the U.S., as an example, because of our government, liquidity has become very available. But the caution, the concern has been just because the money is there, don't just go for it, because your business may actually not exist tomorrow. So let's talk about it a little bit. You said capital is important, necessary at all times, and this is more critical to allow you to innovate, to pivot, and so forth. But let's talk a bit about the caution about not being too in a hurry to just, or not seeing capital availability as evidence that you got a working business model. Thoughts? Yeah, Robert?
Yeah, first thing, I think you guys just get the capital thing out of your mind for a second, because if all you're doing is worrying about how much money do we need, how much money to survive, and all that, it takes away from the thing that you need to be focused on, and that's your purpose and mission. You got to say, what are we trying to do? Do I want to still be doing this? I think you got to look at the multiple situations, and before you start to address the capital issue, you got to say, what are we trying to do in our business? Do we want to still be around? Do you want to? Because I do believe anyone that really, really wants to keep and continue can, but you have to do it with the right mindset, and it starts with your purpose. Your kingdom purpose, right? And then figure out, what do I need to do? What are we going to need to adjust? Let's create this business plan for the future, as Richard was talking about, basically, and put together, what does the future look like for this business? What changes need to be made? And at the end, how is this going to make an impact for the kingdom, right? And then we can reverse engineer and say, with the adjustments that we can make within our own control right now, can we make the adjustments without going to the outside to getting lenders and getting investors? Because even now, I think there's a lot of business that can make the pivot without going for outside capital. But the first thing that's always a crutch, though. As soon as you say money's available, people go, "Oh, let's go for it." That's the wrong attitude, because you got to look back and let's say what. That's why I said capital is really defined by, its definition is about resources. What resources do I have to make the change for the long term? Exhaust all options before you start, especially loans, because obviously there's debt involved, there's interest rates involved, even investors. The way I look at it is if an investor in a bank is willing to invest into you, that means they've seen that you can do it by yourself, because they only get the return when you're profitable, right? You get the return, they get the return out of your profits. Well, in the bank, no, that's debt, so that's part of your expense sheet. But as an investor, they only get the return from the profit. So I always look at it, I always counsel people, say, if people are interested, that means they see the ability for you to make a profit without them. Now, it might be slower, but you don't have to worry about other people in your business, right? So it's not to say that you never go outside. But what I'm saying is you got to go through the steps before you just make a knee-jerk reaction to say, I got to go for an investor or I got to go for debt. And as an investor, I want to invest into something that really, really needs it. Because people have pitched me a couple times and I look at it and I go, you don't need me. I don't want to invest into someone that really doesn't need me. If all they're doing is looking for money, but I see they have the ability to do it on their own, why? I want to invest in someone that truly, truly needs it, and also needs more than money, but needs more counsel. Because a lot of times people want a silent investor, and investors are only silent when the money keeps coming in. They're not silent later. And so I said, if you want a silent investor, that's not me. Because I'm investing, I'm now a partner. And I want to be part of this journey, right? So anyways, there's a number of things I have to consider, but I would always go through the steps. Number one, you got to understand your kingdom purpose. They want to still keep going, and then work through the steps to see if I can do it without any other help. And if it's the last ditch approach, then we go outside capital.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And one thing to add there, because that's what we have to go through in Nehemiah, ask the question, will this capital add significant value to what we're doing, enabling us to pay it back, and not drift from mission? Richard, let me go to you for a different question. So people are listening and watching, and they're saying, okay, what are the criteria, for this forum coming up? It may be too late for new. We have 2 entrepreneurs that may be pitching this year. They're still in the vetting process right now. We're going to talk about them in a few minutes. But we definitely have entrepreneurs who we've invested in who are going to be coming back and kind of giving updates. But if somebody want to consider, let's say next year, or to be invested for capital through our Kingdom Investors Network, what are the criteria? What are some of the things that they need to do to prepare for it?
Well, the first thing they need to do is to go through our biblical entrepreneurship course, because that sets the whole foundations for everything. From what we were talking about as far as the kingdom purpose, the vision, what it is you're about, how you're going to make sure that your projections are solid. The biblical entrepreneurship course will provide you with that. Secondarily, we do require you to have a business coach if you're pursuing investment capital with us. So it's like Robert says, we aren't silent partners. If you have a business coach who's not affiliated with Nehemiah Project or Kingdom's Coaching, then have a vetting process that we take those coaches through as well. Let me back up to say that our investors also have to go through the biblical entrepreneurship course. so that both investors and the entrepreneurs are coming together from the same place. So then it's a matter of submitting, once you've gone through the course of submitting an interest form. We take you through an application process, and then move on into the vetting. I don't know if you wanted me to go into the vetting process at this time, Patrice, or what?
No, not yet, because of our time. But I do want to ask you a question. So,
Okay.
kind of the front of the process. So, Robert, Richard, you are also an investor. You just recently made an investment into a fund that's going to businesses. So, what would you be looking for? Maybe it is the vetting question, but what would you, as an investor, like many other investors, going to be there? What are things that they're going to be looking for to determine whether they can invest in this or not? What can you say there?
Well, one of the first things that I look for as I'm considering a business to invest in is what the impact we're making. There are the businesses that I've worked with that are, that it's a very solid Christian-owned business, but its focus is not making an impact for the kingdom. And so it's working through that mindset so that what you are doing is not just simply putting to your pocket and then having your tithe come out of that to benefit a ministry that you believe in and want to, but that your actually work is making an investment in the kingdom. And that can be obviously an investment in an opportunity to share the gospel through opportunities that would arise. It could be your relationships that you have, how you treat your employees, and also your vendors. So working with the relationships beside there, and of course, obviously your other business partners and the investors that you have, and how those relationships are lived out in a way that honors Christ. So that's primarily where I look the first. Then second, I look at whether or not financials are in order, whether there are the projections seem reasonable and attainable. I probably should back up a little bit and say is the business needed? Is the first qualification in all of this. If you've got 14 different business coaches in a zip code, the chances of adding a 15th probably isn't going to generate a lot of interest or clientele unless you have something that's very unique and specific that you're doing. So ability is also something that
I love it. Thank you, Richard. Robert, we promote this event as an educational one where the audience are there to kind of really learn, to improve their own skills and prepare their own selves so they might be able to be better at making the pitch. So as the MC, I'm listening, watching this, and I'm considering coming. Why should I come? What are some things I can learn from this that may be valuable to me as an individual?
Yeah, definitely. It is a great learning experience, and the attendee needs to go in there and understand, listen to both sides, listen to the pitch, but also listen to the questions that are being asked. A lot of times, Shark Tank, referred to as kind of like a Shark Tank, and sometimes these sharks get a bad rap, when you're watching the program. because they sound so ruthless and they're just after money and all that kind of stuff. Well, number one, you got to understand is they're investing their money into you and they're expecting a return. That's the deal. So the first thing they want to know is, am I going to get my money back and how? So whether or not you're intending to pitch an investor, I think any business owner could really learn a lot from watching this, because you watch how other businesses are thinking and processing their business and how they put together their plan, how their approach to marketing. There's a lot of takeaways that you can probably take just from the entrepreneurs that are presenting. And then from the investors, the questions that they ask, listen to the questions and ask yourself, can I answer that question? Because they're always asking fundamental questions. And it always makes me laugh on Shark Tank. They ask the same type of financial questions, and it surprises me. Well, it doesn't surprise me anymore. It amazes me how unprepared these entrepreneurs come, because they already know the questions. Even if you haven't been prepped by the producer, if you just watch the show, you kind of understand what questions they're going to ask, what they're interested in. These are fundamental questions to see if you understand your financials, how you're going to make money, how you're going to make a profit. Do you understand your market? These are just fundamental questions that they're going to ask, and you need to be able to ask that. Need to be able to answer that question for yourself, because if you can't, then that's something for you to be able to work on in your business. And don't look at these investors as greedy investors. I mean, you got to think about yourself. I mean, you want to make a profit too, right? So you're the investor. Just think of you as the investor. So as the investors are asking questions in the forum, put yourself in their shoes as though you're asking yourself the same question and see if you can answer it. If not, then those are some things to work on.
I love it. But Robert, what if my business has a clearly determined kingdom impact, but I just need the money, and I can't demonstrate how I can return it? On these kingdom investors, doesn't that trump the whole money return thing?
It goes back to, like, everybody's got a great idea. Right? You can have on paper, you can have the greatest impact in the world. But if you don't understand how you're going to make money, then obviously you don't have a roadmap to success. You have no idea. Now, we all know just business plans are really a fluid document. It's not all plans work according to plan exactly. But you have to have an idea of where you're going. You have an idea of your market, who you're going to sell to, how you're going to sell it, how you're going to get the awareness, how you're going to buy it, and then on the pricing, how you're going to price it so you're going to have a profit, the forecast. You have to have some idea of how you're going to get there. If all you have is a great idea, well, and there's not a whole lot of people are going to invest in that, unless they know how to make it work, and then basically they're going to take more of the equity. but like they say, the dime doesn't. So you got to demonstrate that you understand how you're going to make it work.
I love it. Well said, guys. We've come to our last question. You guys have been going to be talking to Robert Fukui and Richard Zielke about the Nehemiah Week 2020, the Global Kingdom Investors Forum. Robert will be our MC for the event, and Richard is preparing the entrepreneurs who will be making the pitch as they seek to raise capital. Good tips, good advice. My last question for both of you. Well, before we get the last question, Robert, you are the MC. Help me sell the event. Right now the camera's going to be on you. Speak to the audience, and then you kind of just did that. Actually, you kind of just did that. Anything different you're going to say other than what you just said? You kind of did that, right?
Yeah, basically that was my pitch, but maybe it wasn't a good enough pitch for you.
They'll take that. Go ahead.
If you really, there's a number of reasons. There's a number of other reasons why you'd want to be part of this event. Some of it is what I just outlined. The question before is, look at this as though you're the investor pitching, and it's your business itself, and can you answer these questions? But also looking at what a kingdom business looks like. And I think it's going to stimulate some ideas. Even if you have never taken biblical entrepreneurship, this is a great insight in how the course works. But more importantly, how you should think about your business from a biblical perspective, from a kingdom perspective. Because I think some business owners think that having a greater purpose, a kingdom purpose, that's great, it's fluff. It's beautiful, but at the end of the day, I need to make money, right? Which, well, you do. Obviously, you won't be in business very long if you're not profitable. But a kingdom purpose, when you understand your kingdom purpose, that is what you call your due north. That's the thing that you're trying to achieve. Everything else, if you achieve that kingdom purpose, then the profits actually will follow. The profits are really just an outcome, a side effect, basically, of achieving your kingdom purpose. Because that means you're impacting a lot of people. When you're impacting a lot of people in a positive way, they're going to want to do business with you. Right? I mean, whether it's a product or service. And so look at this as a learning experience to figure out, do I understand my kingdom purpose? And also just to applaud these other kingdom entrepreneurs that are making this pitch, because they're going through the same journey or maybe just starting on this journey, but you can applaud what they're doing. And maybe they've already been in business and they're just looking for additional capital. But I mean, just applaud what they're doing and how they're doing it with a kingdom purpose.
Wow. Thank you, sir. Hey, if you want to join, go to nehemiahweek.com. There you can register. There's still space available and be a part of not just the Kingdom Investors Forum, but the entire week of activity. You can learn and grow and be a part. Tomorrow, we're going to have Az Hillman here in studio as he talked to you about his talk on the 7 mountains of influence. And then Friday, we're going to have one of the investors, Renee Villa, as he's going to talk about what he'll be looking for in the business he's already invested in as you prepare to be a part with it this week, this next month. So, gentlemen, last question for you. It's been a tough season for entrepreneurs around the globe. In the U.S. particularly, we've had social unrest, all kinds of stuff. So what last advice or insight would you like to leave our audience as they try to navigate these uncertain times? So let's start with you, Richard, and we'll close with Robert.
Well, I think first and foremost is to understand that you're not in this alone, and to make sure that you have surrounded yourself with brothers and sisters in Christ who can support and encourage you. Reach out and to a business coach that will be able to help you develop your kingdom business and see you through this time. I think are the 2 steps that I would recommend.
All right, thank you, Robert. What advice would you give them?
Well, first of all, I think turn off social media and the news. I think there's just so much stuff going on, and it's just not good for your soul. It's not good for your soul. And I think you need to focus on the Lord, number one, your family around you that you have. And then when it comes to the business, is focus on the things you can control. I think that's part of what, I think driving people nuts, when you're watching the news, watching social media, is like all this stuff that's out of control and you feel out of control. But focus back on, in your prayer time, just focus back on what are things I can control. Right. And then once you focus on that, then you start to develop what's the next step. Well, like I said earlier, when it comes to business, is just assume things aren't going to get better. And then what do we need to do to move forward? And of course, God's got to be first and foremost. So how do we still continue to achieve our kingdom purpose? Lord, what do we do? What can I do? What's your part, Lord? Because obviously there's going to be a lot that the Lord's going to have to do, but there's a lot of stuff that we can do. And understanding what your role is at this time is important. So that goes to understanding what are the things that you can control, and just turn off all the other stuff and focus on what the business at hand.
I love it. You heard it here, guys. Robert Fukui and Richard Zielke as they talk about the Nehemiah Week 2020 Kingdom Investors Forum. If you want to join and be a part, go to nehemiahweek.com. nehemiahweek.com. You can join it between the 10th and the 15th and be a part of this transformational week and hear and support these entrepreneurs make their pitch and learn from them. Robbie, we're going to have you and your wife come back and talk about the couples by design. Looking forward to hear more about that and give insight. Thank you so much, gentlemen, and see you guys at Nehemiah Week. But don't you leave yet, because we have a video I want to share with you guys. I want to pray for you, and we have a video I want to share with you guys before you leave. Again, this is Nehemiah Week 2020 Kingdom Investors Forum. If you want to join and be a part, go to nehemiahweek.com. nehemiahweek.com. You can join it between the 10th and the 15th and be a part of this transformational week and hear and support these entrepreneurs make their pitch and learn from them. Robbie, we're going to have you and your wife come back and talk about the couples by design. Looking forward to hear more about that and give insight. Thank you so much, gentlemen, and see you guys at Nehemiah Week. But don't you leave yet, because we have a video I want to share with you guys. Join us again tomorrow. We're going to have Oz Hillman in studio. And then on Friday, we're going to have Renee Villa in studio. Hey, if you want to know how to connect with us, go to NehemiahEcommunity.com, NehemiahEcommunity.com. There you can learn to access our training, coaching, and access to capital. And then you can become a member so that together we can transform the world. And then share this podcast with friends and family. Share with as many folks as you can, because this is a great podcast that you can use to help others who are looking to raise capital, to grow, or to start their businesses, to hear insights from Richard and Robert as to how they can prepare their own businesses for the purpose of making their pitch or self-financing. Because as Robert said, you may not need the capital at the end of the day. Because remember, the Word of God says that we are called to be lenders and not borrowers. That's your destiny. Whether you are borrowing now, your aim ought to get to a point you are a lender like Richard, a lender into other businesses and not a borrower. Well, let me pray for you. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord enable you to steward those talents that He's placed under your care, and to steward them in such a way that one day you can hear those words, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things. Guess what? He'll now make you ruler over much." God bless you. Watch this video. Thank you, guys. See you Nehemiah Week.
All right. Thanks, Patrice. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Nehemiah Week.
All right.
An annual
Thanks,
event
Patrice.
designed to equip entrepreneurs and leaders from around the world to inspire and to honor marketplace leaders for their accomplishments and what they're doing to model Christ in the marketplace.
God is doing incredible things at Nehemiah Week.
Ladies and gentlemen, God has called us to be a light for Him, to be an example for Him, to be a model for Him, so that as others see us, not hear us, but see us, they can see a model of Christ.
Yeah, each year at Nehemiah Week, we gather the nations.
Our vision is to transform the marketplace with the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ, one entrepreneur at a time.
We have learned to do business in a godly way. I will actually spread this to our church as well.
Through the course of Nehemiah Week includes information around principles of biblical entrepreneurship, so really looking at biblical economics.
What we've learned this week is about training. Our Nehemiah project is about training and then coaching and then accessing capital.
Nehemiah gave me a godly vision. Really impacts the way that I see doing business.
Nehemiah Week not only gives birth to new ideas, it connects us with resources and relationships that makes them possible.
So what we want to do is not just affect here in the U.S. We want to take this curriculum all over the world.
Whatever it is, the question is, what impact will this have on others?
It's something that's going to change lives. So I'm ready to use whatever I have for the benefit of the kingdom of God.
I believe that the nations are going to shake because of this week. Biblical entrepreneurship takes a stand to say we are going to be witnesses for Jesus Christ in the marketplace.